Right, thank you everyone. Got to be honest, last time I stood in front of a crowd this size I was arrested, so if I feel if I look a bit wobbly, right, flashbacks. So I'm going to fill in. Peter's done just the most astounding job. It's a very, very difficult act to follow, so I'm just going to maybe broaden the picture out. There's going to be focus on the kids, because that's my main remit, is to protect the generations coming through. But also to give you a bit of clarity on why it's so difficult to be a sovereign. Why is it so damn difficult to be a sovereign? And even more difficult to get somebody else to be a sovereign with you. Alright, so we'll look at the bait and switches that have gone on and all the traps that the system places in front of us to hold us back. So, where did our sovereignty go? A word of caution. Suzerainty or sovereignty, and I'll come to what suzerainty is in a minute, is in reality only available to a minority. So when Pete used the word plebs, we're going to break that down a bit, because there are some people who cannot attain sovereignty. And we're going to look briefly at why that might be the case. Recently, ChatGPT was asked to break down humanity into its component parts. And this is what ChatGPT came up with. Now, I have my ways and means of verifying certain information. So far, it seems reliable. I wouldn't take the precise data too seriously, but the principle is sound. And the idea is that not everybody walking around that looks human is actually human. So what we have is a certain low percentage who are robots, inorganic. They were created by the military to do military tasks. We also have clones. They were created by the military in collaboration with corporations. They fulfill the role of celebrities, controlled opposition, and wasters, and all kinds of things. So that's another 15%. So that's already 25% non-organic beings. Now it may be 20%, it may be 30%, but it's a minority. But it's still a huge number if you do the maths. And then you've got the non-playing characters. Now the non-playing characters are the ones that really piss us off the most, because they're the ones that are programmed by the system to represent the system in human form. They're never going to be convinced by whatever we're doing or whatever we say. It's just not going to happen. And the reason is that they are disconnected beings. They are not fully fledged human. They are organic, and they live and breathe and die, but they're not like us. And what the secret is you've got to identify them, which is not that easy. So that takes practice. Just as it takes practice to be a sovereign, it takes practice to spot the desouled, dehumanized, no connection to source, living entity. And they're about half. They could be even more than half. So they're the ones that propped up the COVID narrative. They're the ones that will take a jab without question, because they're pre-programmed. They haven't been programmed while they're alive. They're pre-programmed. They come in programmed. So they're not going to offer any resistance to the narrative, because they are the narrative. That leaves us with about 25%. Organic humans with a soul, and that's 1 in 4. So that means you're walking down the street, and now you know why most people ignore you, because they don't have enough soul energy to want to engage with you. 1 in 4. Now, the potential sovereigns amongst that 1 in 4 is 1%. So the potential sovereigns, and I was at an event recently and we used different terminology, so I've adjusted the terminology to suit this event. The potential sovereigns are therefore 1 in 100 of the 1 in 4. Now, you can take these figures with a pinch of salt, and they may not be perfectly accurate, how could they be? But it gives you an idea that when you're looking for fellow sovereigns, you're looking for 1 in 400 beings. 1 in 400. So how many have we got here? 200, so we've got half a sovereign here. So Half of P. Right, no, obviously, but we're coming together, so obviously I'm taking the mickey a bit, but 1 in 400. So walking down the street, you're giving out the light paper, looking for a connection with a fellow potential sovereign. 400 people have got to walk past you before you're going to find one, on average. Yeah, so that will explain, and the reason why I'm so glad to come across these figures, because now we can calm down. We can lower our expectations about the general masses. Most of them are not available. They're not open for business. They're not open. 3/4 of them, a quarter of them are not even organic, and half of them are not interested in any kind of individual process, individual ascension, or sovereign. They're not programmed for it. So another reason that even the ones who are destined to be sovereign, struggle is because they can't grasp the concept that before you learn, you have to unlearn. Because we've all been programmed to a lesser extent or another. So we've got to unlearn what we thought we knew because we knew nothing. And a friend of mine who was actually prominent in the practical lawful dissent movement, now deceased, said that we're all idiots in recovery. And I like that quote. We're all idiots, imbeciles, retards. We are. All of us. We're doing our best to make up for that, and we're playing catch up. Because that's what the elite did. That's what they've done to us. And we'll come to that. It's the schooling system. Okay, so our baseline has been recognised for many hundreds of years. This is the baseline. The state may do nothing but that which is expressly authorised by law, while the individual may do anything but that which is forbidden by law. That's Entick versus Carrington in 1765. That's our baseline starter point. So as individuals, as long as we're not harming or trespassing or breaching contract, we may do as we wish. So it's not satanic. The satanic principle is do as you please, end up, and they put a full stop there. We remove the full stop and we put provisos. As long as we're not trespassing anyone else's sovereignty or breaching a contract that we've entered into honourably, we can do as we wish. The government is the opposite. They can do nothing, absolutely nothing, until they've got our signature or our blessing or our permission. So the permission, the programming says that they don't need permission, but they do. They always need permission. And the programming suggests that we need permission, but we never need permission. When people visit me in my house and say, "Excuse me, but do you mind if I use your toilet?" I say, "No, you can go out and piss on the garden lawn like everybody else." And the point is, I'm not belittling them. I'm just saying that certain things you don't need permission. Just do it. So when I go to someone's house, I say, "Excuse me, where's your toilet?" I don't ask for permission. Just, where is it? Right? Otherwise, I'm afraid I'm going to have to go out in the garden. So the right to self-governance and self-determination is encapsulated in one word, which I did mention before, sovereignty. So sovereignty is all about me governing me. And it overlaps with sovereignty. So we're not, this is the sovereign project, but within sovereignty is sovereignty. So when I went into a shop in Wales during COVID, she said, "Excuse me, sir, you need to wear a mask." I said, "I can't do that." She said, "Why not?" She said, she said, "Why not?" I said, "It's against the law." And that's what I meant. It meant as a sovereign being, nobody tells me what I can do or not do with my own body. Total bodily autonomy. And the law is the law of do no harm, and in particular, do no self-harm. Everyone thinks about doing no harm to third parties. What about self-harm? Taking a jab is an act of self-harm. Excuse me. So no one can tell me what to do or what to think. Excuse me, what? Not my water gone.
I put it here, so I didn't.
Oh, right. No one can tell me what to do or what to think, no matter my age and regardless of their perceived position. End of.
Ball's in the way.
They're always ahead of me here, I tell you. Right, okay. As far back as 1796, the US judiciary recognised the inherent rights and freedoms of man. So this was the US version of Entig versus Carrington. A quote from this famous case is, "There, every man is independent of all laws except those prescribed by nature." There's your sovereignty. "He is not bound by any institutions formed by his fellow man without his consent." That's Cruden versus Neal, 1796. Now, things have deteriorated very badly since then, so we've got to ask what has happened to us since we were recognised as sovereign or sovereign in 1796. What's gone wrong? And I've already hinted at it. No, we were incarcerated from a very early age. You can't have your sovereignty or sovereignty eroded unless you go to school. You'll just be a natural sovereign or sovereign if you grow up in a state of self-governance, in a state of self-education. You're not going to compromise your own power, are you? You're going to express it, but they send you to school so that they can do a job on you. Now I've just exposed that half of the people they send to school, probably more than half, probably 3/4, because they're not going to send robots and clones to school, right? So it's probably 2/3. Let's say it's 2/3. 2/3 of the people they send to school, they don't need to do a job on. So it's us lot, the 1/3, the 1 in 3 that go to school, that they need to do a job on, and they populate the school with these pre-programmed. What can we call them? Well, plebs. Pre-programmed beings who don't have any moral compass, any true divine intelligence. They just don't have it. Well, they're simply there to make up the numbers so that the system can give us a good going over. Because without that good going over, the system would just explode in 2 seconds flat. Another recognition of our rights, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, 1948, Article 1. All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. Now, as Pete rightly says, they do not create our rights. The best they can do is recognise them. That's the best they can do. That's all they can do is recognise them. Right? Because an inferior entity, and we're the superior entity because we're divine source connected, eternal souls, cannot be granted rights except by the divine creator. And if you're a humanist or an atheist, then you'll just have to bear with me on that one. The moment a boy or girl sets foot in school, they are no longer equal in dignity and rights to the staff. They become school property, and Pete's already hinted at how that works. They learn to be the servants of their white-collar masters. My teachers at grammar school were actually referred to as masters. That's Manchester Grammar. They're referred to as masters. So what TF does that make me? If they're my masters, what does that make me? Slave or servant. Schooling is part of a series of bait and switch processes. And there's so many, I've just picked on the 3 most prominent ones. The first one is the medicalised birth. So birthing is treated as something that needs hospital attention, when in 99% of all cases it does not. So, you're already born in a traumatised state because your mother's traumatised. And then they cut the umbilical cord. Yeah, thank you. I think I put it on the floor now. Yeah. So, the start we get in life with the umbilical cord snapped or broken, it means that we're depleted from birth. You add on the birth certificate construct, which is like a soul contract via the Vatican. I don't have time to go into details. I'm sure you've covered it in your courses. But the long and the short of it is that we literally days after being born, we are lesser beings. We've got an implied contract with dark forces. and we've got less of our true power than we should have. That's bait and switch one, but of course, we've got our parents have got our birth certificate, so they're happy. Bait and switch two is the three estates. And the three estates connected to the birth situation. The first estate is a divine trust. The baby is born, granted life by the Creator, placed in the care of the mother, father, caregiver. And the three key trust elements are in place, which is a grantor, which is the Almighty, the divine source, all that is. What you give it your own title, your own name. The grantor, creator, mum and dad or caregiver or trustee, and we, the infant, are the beneficiary of that divine trust. That's the first estate. The second estate, well, mum and dad, caregiver in their ignorance, they don't know any better, fill out paperwork, become informants, and Pete covered that. They inform on themselves and on the baby, and they send off paperwork to the government, but they don't, which creates a trust in itself. Whenever you deliver an instrument to a third party, they're holding it in trust for you. But the mum or dad or caregiver don't give any instructions. So this trust is doomed to failure. They don't set out the terms and conditions of the trust. And lack of certainty in a trust collapses the trust even. So the second trust is a stillbirth, if you see what I mean. So the third trust comes into being, and this is an implied trust, because the government now sends you back paperwork. You sent in the paperwork not knowing what the implications were. The government now sends the paperwork back, so you're the trustee, and you've gone from being a mum or a dad to being a trustee parent, pair of renters, and the boy or girl or the infant, the baby, is now a child, and the trust is complete because we have terms of the trust embedded into the statutes and codes and regulations. And the trust doesn't need to be an express trust, because implied trusts can be created out of thin air without any writing, and that's written into the 1925 Law of Property Act, section 53, subsection 2. And it's very interesting that that came into force before the birth certification process, where we made into collateral in the 1930s, got underway in full swing. So they're operating a very long timeline. We operate a timeline, it's tiny in comparison. Again, that's another reason that we're playing catch up. We're in a permanent state of being behind the eight ball, you see, because they've planned all this out over decades, hundreds of years, even thousands of years. So this third estate, which doesn't need any paperwork, this third trust estate, gives the parents fiduciary obligations as trustees. There's no more powerful obligation than a fiduciary obligation. It's an obligation to be loyal, to be faithful, to be transparent, to be protective, to be a custodian, a steward, a guardian, as a trustee. And in a trust in which the child is the beneficiary, obviously, to look after their health and well-being, and the government is also an undisclosed beneficiary as well. The government is equally a general executor, so if things are not quite going according to the government's stated plans that they've put into their codes and regulations, then they can step in and action some kind of remedial process and get their relief in equity, which they will call breaches of the law, but it's actually getting relief in equity. So, for example, the law cannot enforce the return of a baby or a child, but equity can. Equity has restitution. Only in equity can you recover something. Not statutorily, not even at common law, not even legally. There's no such thing as restitution. It has to be in equity. So when your car is taken, the government are operating equitable principles. And I don't have time to go into that, but that's I do go into that in substantial detail on my own course, but that's another day's work. The terms of the trust are statutes and regulations. So that gives you an insight into what's going on. And You can apply that across the board, to be honest. Children, cars, homes, they're operating very similar principles. Secret trusts, implied trusts. But I'm not here, I just don't have time to go into that. More implications. When we come of age, we take over from our parents as the trustee of the third estate. This puts us in a fiduciary position to obey the terms of the trust. So now we are an unappointed fiduciary of our own estate, which makes us already unlawful. Nobody asked us to be the estate. We just step into it and we think it's natural, because all those other clones, robots, and desouled persons, that could be a way of keeping, separating them out, are doing it without thinking. They'll never question it in a million years. And we look around and think, well, everybody seems to be doing it. Well, I better do it. So we don't question it ourselves. Until one day we meet someone like Pete, or myself, or Ray, and we start asking questions. So this puts us in a fiduciary position to obey the terms of the trust that are in common vernacular known as the laws. And again, they use words that they're gaslighting us every single step of the way. When they use the word law, everyone thinks, oh, must obey, must comply, it must be above me in some way. No, they're just terms of their codes. Terms and conditions of their codes. How could it be law how could a law have a printing error in it, or a typo? Or how could a law be written ABC on Tuesday and then ADEF on Thursday? What kind of law is that? That's policy. Policies can change in a minute, but laws are eternal. They certainly last longer than a minute. Third estate implications. What makes matters worse is that we lay claim to a legal name that is not ours to claim. Simply answering to the name of the legal person or the legal person's estate is a form of identity fraud or unlawful administration. So, again, whenever you interface with the legal system, if you interface in the legal name, unconsciously and unknowingly, then you're already guilty of something, whatever that is. Even if it's just unlawful administration. Unwittingly, we have shifted from divine innocence, that's how we start, all babies are innocent, to presumed guilt or liability in this legal matrix, because they operate presumptions. And this presumed guilt is one of the 12 presumptions of court, or presumptions of commerce, I think you call them, because the court is a bank, so they're both good titles. And again, unless you know about these presumptions and you've studied the 12 presumptions, you're wasting your time interfacing with the legal system. Don't even bother. Do not even bother. Because you've got to rebut those presumptions. That's the first thing you've got to do, is to rebut those presumptions. Otherwise, you'll be made mincemeat of. How do we transition from lawful innocence to presumed legal guilt? Well, I think you've already worked this one out, is the other classical bait and switch, which is the schooling system. To compromise our sovereignty and to put us in a state of presumed guilt and liability, they have to send us to school. And we have a new 3 R's. Now, I did actually have four of them, but I thought, no, keep it neat. And there's an R that's gone missing because I don't want to run over. These are the 3 R's that they put us through. By the way, the 4th one is radicalisation, and that's the gender crap and the climate crisis bollocks. But we'll make do with 3 because it's nice and symmetrical with the old version of the 3 R's, which is reading, writing, arithmetic. And the kids coming through can neither read, nor write, nor count. I met a 30-year-old recently who couldn't even write her name. And that's why, so they've deliberately retarded people's faculties so that they can offer them the remedy, which is IT and AI, isn't it? Devices, gadgets. R1, registration. R2 is repression, and R3 is retardation. So let's briefly go through those. Registration. You can only get into school using the legal name. You know, you try getting into school saying, yeah, hi, I'm David. It's not going to happen. They need the full name. Because they're operating, they're the government's agent, government's corporate policy, curriculum delivery and enforcement agents. And they need the legal name. They always need the legal name. The government owns the legal name. Well, Pete's explained how that works. They create it. It's the rule. It's a law of commerce, a rule, I should say. Whatever I create, I own. Another reason not to play fast and loose with your own so-called name. You don't own it. It's not yours. If you answer to the legal name, the government owns you. Are you Mr. John Smith? Oh, yes, I am, thank you. Everyone's so proud to be who they are because they've spent years developing a career. What is a career? It's a career. What does that mean? You've lost control. So they've spent years developing a platform in which they've lost their soul and lost control of their lives. But they proudly call it a career. Which is why I gave up on my career as a solicitor 40 years ago. I didn't know what I know now, but I was intuiting. I was just following my compass, my heart. But this is wrong. Something's wrong. I don't know what it is. I know it's wrong. So I just started to define my own life. You no longer have rights. Property has no rights. So if you're government property, don't expect rights. Property can be arrested, like vessels in shipping maritime laws. Vessels can be arrested. Property has no rights. When you travel on your passport, your cargo. So that's R1, registration. R2, repression. We need permission to speak at all times. You can see when you look at these how the erosion of sovereignty. Remember, this isn't a 2-week or a 2-month or even a 2-year period. These are 10 to 15 years of your formative years. We need permission to speak at all times. Assisting another classmate is cheating. So there's a bit of guilt. Throwing in a bit of guilt. What are the 2 lowest vibrations? Just above death. No, fear is actually not that low. Much lower than fear. Shame. Thank you. Shame and guilt. That's where we're breaking down the schooling process. It's a process of shaming and guilt tripping. An efficient class relies on total silence. That's why people can take a microphone and they whisper into it. Because they're running a program that, quiet, you need permission to speak. And if you're going to speak, don't speak too loudly. Because you might say something that the other kids need to hear, and we can't have that. All communication must go through the authority figure. This is the classroom dynamic. Teachers get 90% of class airtime. On average, there's some amazing teachers that make do with about 80. And some teachers go for 100. But if you do the maths, let's average it out at 90. That means 30 kids share 10%. That means they get 12 seconds each per class hour to expand, express. It's not happening. So it's 12 seconds of pure compliance or guilt tripping. Or grovelling explanations, why they didn't do this and didn't do that. People pleasing. You can see how it works. R3, retardation. We're force-fed information. I could do an entire day just on these 3 screens. Easily. There is no room or time for true learning by experience. Critical independent thinking stamped out, and it's getting worse. It's getting worse by the day. This is an urgent operation required here. So, get the helicopter ramped up, land in a school playground and take some kids out. Either literally or metaphorically. There's a war on kids going on. It's getting ridiculous. Success is based on a memory test only. It's a memory test. It's absolutely, academic, of no practical use or value. It's a memory test. As soon as you memorize it and pass your test, it's all forgotten. And if that doesn't show that your time spent doing that was not a waste of time, I don't know what does. Total waste of time, energy, precious learning. All gone to waste because you were too busy trying to pass a test. Even the driving test isn't nothing to do with driving. It's the schooling model. Right, turn left here. So you turn left. Now we'll do a 3-point turn, so you do a 3-point. That's not driving. You know, they want to take you out and about randomly. And maybe have some actors step into the road, see how you cope. No, that's probably something. Failure is safer, or cyclists. They're a good test of patience. But yeah, that's what the examiner should be. Should be a cyclist, a secret cyclist, a secret shopper, secret cyclist. See how you cope. Right. Failure is safer and makes you more popular. Failure is absolutely what will get you through school. There's your sovereignty down the swanny, there and there. Fail. We'll support you in your failure. We'll give you a mentor. We'll give you drugs. We'll give you anything you want, but just keep failing. Just keep failing. And the peer group will say, yeah, high five. What, you got 1% in maths? Oh, wow, high five. What is not required in the classroom? Your brain, don't need it. Your body, it's strapped to a chair. Not literally, obviously, but metaphorically. Your imagination, you don't need it. What are these traits? Are they not sovereign traits? Your creativity, your character, your unique individuality, your soul or spirit, your superhuman gifts and talents, not required, surplus to requirements. Imagine taking that into the army. Funnily enough, you would be better off in the army with those, character, superhuman gifts and talents. You probably get into the elite corps. But at school, no. What is required in the classroom? Your inert presence. Your fearful compliance, your blind obedience, your groupthink conformity. So like I say, for the 2/3 that are already pre-programmed for that, it doesn't faze them one bit. But for us, it has other implications. What do we learn at school? If you're seen as a failure, like I hinted before, you learn helplessness, hopelessness, powerlessness. How many sovereigns are helpless, hopeless, and powerless? It's not happening. If you are seen as a success, then Stockholm Syndrome kicks in. They made you into success, but it was on their terms and conditions. And now you love them for it. Your abuser is now your hero. So, you see how deliciously evil this trap is. Pure, unadulterated evil. And I asked someone randomly a year after I'd written the book, School No Place for Children. First, shameless plug, I've got some copies here for sale. And she came over, I was in a cafe discussing the book with a friend, and I said, excuse me, but how was your schooling? She said, oh, I loved it. And I thought, hang on a minute, that goes against everything I stand for. I said, are you sure? And she went away with a puzzled expression. She came back and she said, actually, now that you mention it, now that you asked me that second question, the first answer I gave was just knee-jerk. All I could remember was the good times with my mates. And then when you went below that, she said, I was horrified. Schooling was a horror event, a horror story, but your brain looks after you. It buries the trauma. There's a book called Emotions or Feelings Buried Alive, Never Die. So they are always there, but they're just buried. Your brain protects you because it wants you to get on with your life. It doesn't mean that you're not, just because it's like a form of false memory syndrome. Just because you're not thinking about how bad it was doesn't mean it wasn't bad, if you see what I mean. So children now leave school black-pilled, in despair or suicidal. The suicidal ideation amongst the young is off the charts. In America, the stats I used for my book is during the recess, which is the American terminology, while schools are not in operation in the summer break, we would call it, psychiatric admissions go right down for school-age kids and go right back up in September. Well, it would be August. I think the Americans go back before we do. So there is logistical or statistical evidence, statistical evidence to support these ideas. Paranoid distrusting. So they've got the Stockholm syndrome, they trust the system, but they don't trust you. And especially with the generational divide, they definitely don't trust you if you're over 30. Good God. And that's why there's hardly any kids at these events. They don't trust us.
There is one, I brought it.
Well, I did say hardly any. Very good, fantastic. Give them a round of applause. Yeah, it all starts with one. Okay, maybe we need to clone you. Oh, no. Yeah, sat now. Right, so they're distrusting, and teachers will tell them things which are designed to indoctrinate and say, shh, don't tell your parents. And someone was asking me during the break, I've heard, she said, I've heard that there's surveillance cameras in schools. There have been surveillance cameras in schools forever, especially in inner city schools. But now they're in the toilets.
No.
Yeah, they're in the toilets. But it's okay. It's for your children's safety and security. Don't worry about it. We all come out, or most of them, nearly all of them come out, apart from the ones who are pre-programmed to feed the system and be fed by the system. So I'm talking about the 1 in 4, or the 1 in 3, according to which angle we're coming from. Wounded or injured and with post-traumatic stress disorder. It's very subtle, because we've all got it. So it's not what you could call extreme post-traumatic stress disorder. It's not obvious. But if you know where to look, you can see it in yourself and in everyone else. If you know where to look. They come out delusional. They think the planet's going to boil like a soup. Right? So we just need some salt and pepper. We just need some chemtrailers to switch from chemtrailing to put some black pepper and some salt in the tanks. And we could have a nice earth soup. Because these kids think we're going to boil and it's the end of the world. And they are starved, because if you add that to the guilt and shame, then they're blaming themselves. That's why they're suicidal. We don't want to live on a planet that we are killing. That's what's going on. That's how the system is pushing them into a corner. And they're narcissistic. Now, the pre-programmed ones started out narcissistic, but even the non-pre-programmed ones are following that program of narcissism. Because at the end of the day, the beast system is narcissism on steroids. It's all about me. It's one humongous parasite that only knows its own needs. And obviously, can't go into that any further. Typical narcissistic attributes, and you will recognize these attributes in those people that have given you the hardest time, as well as the enforcement agents and all the people, in inverted commas, that have made your life or given you the most severe challenges. They're lazy, they're apathetic, they're hypocritical of virtue signalling. So during the so-called lockdown, if you went to Sainsbury's and didn't come back for 6 hours, they'd be on the phone to the police. They're fearful, they're self-doubting, and they hate it when you lose your fear and stop self-doubting. They hate you for that. They're status-obsessed, materialistic, they're controlling, they're transactional. We are developing a realm of interaction, of equals, equal men and women, interacting, not transacting, interacting. Obviously, in certain commercial situations or business situations, you might transact, that's different. But in personal situations, it's interacting. Taking the banking system out of your brain and out of your heart. Because the schooling system is the banking, like the legal system, the schooling system is the grooming ground, the preparatory ground for the banking and legal system. What do they not teach at school above all? Money, correct. Don't touch it. Professors of economics haven't got the foggiest clue where money comes from or how it's made. It's the elephant in the room. They never discuss it. Stupid. They literally are stupid. They don't have to be stupid, but it makes their life easier to be stupid. It's a choice. Low self-awareness. There's no encouragement to introspect, to meditate. I was pulled up just once in the sixth form at Manchester Grammar. Literally, my master took me aside because I was staring out of the window. I was actually dreaming of another line. That's all I was doing, just staring out the window. I was an excellent student. I was passing all my exams with flying colours. But he said, keep that up and you won't get your A levels. Keep what up? And the Japanese have this culture whereby they encourage staring into space. Boketo, they call it. It features in my book. Staring into space. In our culture, we see that as a pathology. You're right. You're right. You're very quiet. It's a form of introversion. Most of us are on a spectrum. Well, we're all on a spectrum of introversion and extroversion. So for those who have a good dollop of introversion, you have to spend certain moments of the day just literally sitting there with a blank expression, just letting it all sink in. And it's not a pathology, it's a gift. So there's another clue to the schooling system. They pathologize the gifts. They medicalize the symptoms of being superhuman, super sovereign in potential. Gullible and distrusting. So that looks like a paradox. They'll believe anything the mainstream says. There's the gullibility. There's a terrible killer virus on the loose. Oh, right? You're going to kill your granny. I mean, it's just beggars belief once you know how things work. And yet they're distrusting. You come up then with a copy of the light paper. What's that shit? You come up with the facts, the actual factual facts, and they'll look all around it. I've got a yellow board that says climate. There is no such thing as climate crisis, because I'd hand out the light paper on Saturday, and one of the yellow boards says there is no climate crisis, and it's underwritten by John Clauser, Nobel Prize for Physics. And I had this narcissist come up to me, one of these de-sold narcissists, hooked into the system, and she said, "What, do you believe that nonsense?" I said, look at the credentials, because they do credentialism. That's another thing that can feature on there, credentialism. And she goes, "Because you can't win, don't expect ever to win a debate with these people. He's not even a climatologist." Fucking Nobel Prize winner for physics, and she was having a go saying he's not even a climatologist. That was a learning curve, but you can't win. Distrusted the actual scientific evidence. More narcissistic attributes. Entitled. Those agents knock on your door, entitled to come in. They feel as though you're a nuisance by stopping them from coming in. The fact that it's your home is just an unfortunate reality. Pompous, chests come out, and these police officers, right, open up or we'll break the door down, All right, carry on, and you'll be going to prison. It's this entitlement and pomposity to go with the stupidity, the ignorance, the lack of intelligence, lack of education, proper education, because they were schooled. When someone schools you, is that a negative or a positive thing? Yeah, they're giving you a lesson that you'll never forget. Like Trump schooled what's his face, the Ukrainian dude. Yeah, I read on one of these, Trump schooled Zelensky. So whatever your feelings about either of them, you know that it's saying that Zelensky was embarrassed and humiliated by whatever Trump was doing and saying. Schooled. But if somebody educates you, that's different. They're facilitating your growth. So they also come out godless, and that's what the system wants, because the system is godless. Soulless, and we know that a good chunk of them came out or were soulless before they went in. And their attitude, and this is this also explains why they give us such a hard time. I mean well, therefore I do good, therefore I am good. If you oppose me, you must be doing bad, therefore you must be bad. So why should I care whether you live or die? That's the psychology of the sociopath, psychopath, narcissist, programmed de-soulless or de-souled or soulless entity. They have to pretend that they're doing good, and they have to pretend that you're not. The purpose of schooling, well, is to program the soulless and to traumatize the rest. That's it. No other purpose. That's the purpose. And when you're traumatized, you can be triggered. So when you get a knock at the door or a brown envelope with big red print, you're already, don't think, I've overcome all that now, but, I used to get, wobbly knees, because I went to school for just too long. Just too long. So I'm playing catch up as well. Schooling is an ACE. ACE is an adverse childhood experience, which the government recognises, but one thing that it'll never do, it'll give you a list of adverse childhood events that traumatise, scar children for life, and it'll say death of parent, incarceration of parent, illness of parent, divorce of parent. It'll never list schooling. It's not going to happen. So you'll never see schooling and a list of adverse childhood events on the same page. School is also a crime scene. You've got biometric surveillance, which is data abuse, restricted movements, that's false imprisonment, threats of consequences, which is assault or harassment, manhandling pupils, battery, and I'm not even talking about the extreme stuff, the hypersexualization, which is, because I know I had limited time, just sexual offences, not even going there. And then the odd child abuse, sexual abuse. Refusing water or toilet breaks is torture.
That's
Sexual.
That's terrible. That's one of the worst.
Sorry?
Children can't even go to the toilet. I think it's terrible.
Absolutely. Section 134, I can thank Charles Mallett of UK Colin for pointing this out. Section 134 of the Criminal Justice Act 1988, torture, causing severe pain and suffering. Well, some of these kids are getting urinary tract infections.
Yes.
And then you've got the old chestnut of organising with the health service visits to be jabbed or nasal sprayed. So that is criminal conspiracy and aiding, abetting offences against the offences under the offences against the person act. Administering malicious substances. Actual bodily harm, grievous bodily harm. Again, can't go into too much detail. Solutions. Obvious ones. Avoid school, home educate. Deregister your boy or girl. In the booklet, you've got a typical deregistration letter that is provided. Stand up to insanity in the classroom. Now, I've just about got enough time to go into this. So, if you've got, or if you know, a boy or a girl that are still stuck in school and their mum or dad, for some reason, either can't pull them out or won't pull them out, you may have a potential sovereign mother or potential sovereign father, but they're not both. You see what I mean? One is part of the de-souled narcissistic brigade. So, what the one who's got a moral compass could do is hand the boy or girl. These are in action. They've been in action about 18 months, but I only got wind about a year ago that they work. They're working. So I've just got enough time to briefly. Can everyone see one of these cards? Yeah. Okay. I've got a few spare. I wanted to put it on the screen, but I couldn't find the file for some reason. I didn't have time. Anyway, so your boy or girl is under threat from staff. Ask the staff, so get the boy or girl to ask them whether they are giving you an order or a request. And if the staff say request, then obviously you just politely decline it, and it's end of the potential conflict. If the staff say no, it's an order, if they've got the narcissistic entitlement program running through them, then hand them a copy of your family invoice for fulfilling an order in commerce. Because the school is running the banking program. The boys or girls are known as units. And someone went to a teacher training conference and heard the kids described as the product, and she immediately left the teaching profession. So they are units. That's why do you think you have, like, patients in hospitals are units. They're not men and women. Boys and girls in school are units. They are the product of a commercial, business-oriented entity that's doing business with the bank, with the banking system behind it. Banks now sponsor schools. So the first remedy is in commerce, using an invoice for compliance with an order. Alternatively, you've got a statutory remedy. Now, I know that we're trying to avoid standing on statutory remedy. I get that and I respect it. But we have to start somewhere. It's a progressive, step-by-step progress, isn't it? And we have to be a little bit pragmatic sometimes, give remedies that work, and that will become an incident in which the boy or girl, by whatever means, asserted themselves and kept the beast at bay. We can have an inquest later on how maybe it wasn't ideal, but it worked. So ask the staff whether or not they... So we've gone from request or order to choice, yes or no. If the answer is no, you've got no choice. You've got to do as you're told. Then, quote, Section 1 as defined in Section 3, substance Section 5, Modern Slavery Act 2015. Criminal exploitation. There is remedy everywhere in the legal system, but they're not going to tell you where it is, are they? And even people like myself and Ray are gradually uncovering all the remedy, you know, and we're experienced lawyers, and it's taken half a lifetime to even uncover a fraction of it. So, so it is criminal exploitation to make a person, in this case, boy or girl, in this case, do something against their will using threats or force or deception. Well, the threats are obvious, threats of consequences. Force could be used or threatened. Deception is a bit more of a subtle argument. And we don't have time to go into that. Point 6. If the situation gets worse after using any of the above strategies, then remind the staff member of international law, International Convention, Article 28, United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, 1989. Quote, discipline in schools should respect human dignity. So these should be learnt off by heart. Ideally, the boy or girl wouldn't need the card. They need to rehearse it, discuss it with the 1 or 2 parents that are on, or mum or dad, who are on board with freedom and sovereign technology. All countries have signed the convention, therefore all governments are bound by its terms. All schools are bound by it as government agents, and all staff are bound by it as school employees. Here's the not allowed to go to the toilet or drink water. This can cause severe pain and suffering, so we're reiterating what we said before, urinary tract infections, and is the criminal offence of torture, so they can refer to Section 134 Criminal Justice Act 1998. There's a sample family invoice, and I'll leave you to have a look at that. You can write your own, obviously. I've got just 2. I nearly said 3, but it went boing. 2 minutes. I've got 2 minutes for a quick Q&A. It may be a Q, but you might not get the A. So I've got 2 minutes for a Q. Right, any Qs?
Do you give these out at the school gates?
Not the school gates. I'm not. Well, I just give them to groups and parents. They can then, people can get a bulk order off me. I give them out at talks and other events. and I've given out thousands, and according to my stats before, I don't need to give them out to everyone, because one, like Monty Toms, one young man when he was at school, he's 20 now, he stood up for himself, and he was the beacon and the shining light for the rest of the school. Whether or not they follow his example depends on their programming and their level of courage. But,
Question from Simon.
Peter, no, there are 3 Peters. So there are 2 Peters and the David in the middle.
I particularly like your slides. They're a good lead into the notes in this booklet, and I was wondering if it's possible to get hold of a copy.
Of the slides?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Just get in touch with me.
Yeah.
My email address is on the card.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, they're not proprietary. This is open source.
David, are these printable? You pick these off at home?
There's a file. Just go on my website, and there's a file to cover that. There's a file to cover the remedy that I didn't have time to go through, which is for home educators. And I'm actually glad I didn't have time to go through it, because I've got to audit it to make sure it's more in alignment with, so that we come more into alignment. In fact, it's not out of alignment, but certain things need explaining. And if you read it in the booklet and you think, actually, Pete and David are not on the same page, we are, absolutely we are. But I've written that home education remedy to be accepted by the widest possible audience, so it's lowest common denominator, yeah. Rather than get all picky about terminology, which I'm not going to do that yet. I might wander there.
Excellent. Thank you very much. There are 2 questions. Andrew, we're going to wait till 4 o'clock for the Q&A, and the lady there as well. We'll wait till 4 o'clock. I just want to give a massive round of applause to David.